Hey guys, today we're going to do the 2018 prompt for the free response question. It's going to be sort of similar to the one we did yesterday, except what I want to do today is try to focus a little bit more on the difference between assertion and support, because I find that you guys tend to like to give a lot of commentary and repeat the theme rather than providing enough support. So what I want to do is break down two essays today and look at the difference between them, but at the same time also look at this prompt. You're going to need a couple things before we start. So you're going to need to download the PDF I sent you with the two essays. You can either do the exercise on your computer by using a highlighter, or you could print it out and highlight on the sheet of paper. So either way, you need to do that. And in just a minute, I'm going to ask you to annotate the prompt that you see on the screen. So you can either print this out, or you can just kind of take a sheet of paper and bullet out the prompt. So I'm going to ask you to do that now. So hit pause and make sure you have the prompt annotated and the PDFs printed out before you return. Okay, I'm assuming now you have annotated the prompt on your paper, so I'm going to show you what I have done. What I tried to do is annotate this in Microsoft Word, and I highlighted the parts of the prompt that I thought were really crucial. This one is similar to the one you did yesterday, but a little bit different in that it has a specific abstraction that you have to define. So there's so many layers to doing this question. So as I've mentioned many, many times, it's really crucial that you take time to parse the prompt. So this one again, similar to the one yesterday, says select a character. That means just one. So don't bring up other characters unless you're using them to prove an aspect of this character's personality. Um, and it says choose a character who's been given a gift. So again, don't read the list of prompts or the list of novels below. It's a waste of your time. Just go into your bank of knowledge, choose a book that you've read very recently, and choose a character who's been given a gift. And it also says here that it's a character that has a gift that's an advantage and a problem. So this is different from the one yesterday because it said or. This one says and. And that's a crucial part of close reading, is that you would circle this and, just like you circled the or yesterday, and make sure that you're doing both of these. And of course it says discuss the meaning of the work as a whole, and we've talked about how that is theme. And that's why I've suggested that you guys memorize themes before you come into the room. But in this case, if we were to get a Q3, I would, because in 2020, this is going to be open notes, I would bring in a list of themes with me. Um, and I would choose like 5 that you think could apply to several of the books we've read this year. I wouldn't do more than that because then you'll spend too much time reading those notes. If the prompt doesn't ask for the meaning of the work as a whole, please know that they do expect that. Okay, so what I bulleted out over here is just things I could tick off when I'm doing my little 10 minutes of planning. You need to make sure you identify a gift. So a metaphorical gift could be fine, but even better if you would, literal is good, but even better would be metaphorical. Whatever you do, though, make sure that you spend time actually proving the character has that gift. Earlier in the year, we did an essay like this, and you guys talked about, exile, but you didn't explicitly define what exile is or what home is. So when you get to this one, make sure you explicitly explain what a gift is. If it's money, that's probably fine. You don't need to go into exactly the amount that Pip got from Magwitch. But if you're doing a metaphorical gift, you need to make sure you spend the time proving the character actually has that. So if you want to write something like Blanche's intelligence, you need to talk about her wordplay and how she's good at that and give a specific example. If you want to choose something more controversial, the more controversial the topic you choose, the more evidence you need to present. So, for example, some of you might want to write about race or gender. So you might want to write about how femininity is a gift, or you could write about how masculinity is a gift, or how white privilege is a gift. Again, we're going to focus on the world of the novel and how that is true within the world of the novel. So if you cannot in your gut agree with one of those things, don't write about it because it's not going to work for you. But if you feel like you can really attach to something like gender or race, then go ahead and write that essay. It'll be a great essay. But going back to the prompt, look at the organization I gave you here. You have to talk about an advantage and a problem. You have to provide concrete textual evidence of both, and you have to talk about how both contribute to the meaning of the work as a whole. Now, that doesn't mean you have to talk about them in this order. You could flip the script. For example, I think if I were writing about race or class, I might talk about how that gift is a problem, first of all. So for example, if I were doing Hester, I talk about how her gender is a problem because it excludes her from being able to contribute to the rules that are made within that society. And as a result, she's more firmly punished than another character who might be able to bend those rules like Dimsdale. Okay, if you are going to write about There Is a Watching God, for example, you might want to do the advantage first because Janie does have certain advantages that come with her lighter skin. Um, she seems to have more authority, more financial benefits from it. If you've read the book, you know that that's what attracts most of the men in the book to her, particularly Joe, which allows her to acquire money. But then for that book, you might want to do the problem second because that problem is a little bit harder to filter out. That the biracial nature of Janie's background makes it hard for her to feel like she belongs in one central community. Um, Whereas with Scarlet Letter, you might flip that, say gender's the problem, but then you might have to make the more complicated argument for Hester that her gender is an advantage because it lets her think out of the box. Whatever you do, make sure your statement of universality is right there in the intro. And if all else fails, make sure it's in the conclusion. Okay. So at the end of each paragraph, you want to try to weave in the theme without just repeating it in the exact same words. Try to find different ways of wording it, or try to find a way to break your theme into three defensible parts. Like, for example, women are more revolutionary than men. If you're going to say the problem first, you might want to start out with the problem that men are not revolutionary, and then flip it and say that the advantage here is that women are revolutionary because they are not tied into maintaining the rules that currently exist. So there's many different ways to plan this out. You just want to make sure you take about 10 minutes to plan it and follow that diagram that I have. If you want to hit pause now and kind of tentatively come up with a plan for something, that would be great practice right now. What I'm actually going to do is flip into examples right now. So if you're following along with me, the last thing I wanted to say, when you get to your conclusion, that's where you don't want to write in conclusion, no matter what you do, please don't write in conclusion. That is where you want to repeat your thesis, hopefully in different words, and you want to try to connect to the world outside of the text. That almost always helps you get the sophistication point to talk about how those issues are relevant today. Anything you talk about, money, race, class, gender, they're all really relevant today. Okay, sorry, back to what I was saying. So what I'd like for you to do now is pause and pull out the sample set for Invisible Man. I'd like you to grab a pen or use a highlighter, and what I'd like for you to do is separate the commentary from this textual support. So choose a color to put the textual support in and choose a color to put the commentary in, or just underline commentary and use dashes for textual support, one or the other. And when you're done, come back to the video. What I think is really lovely here, if you look at this sample of Invisible Man, is this introduction. It exactly fits the model that we were practicing last week. You see the general information moving down into the assertion. The blue part here is something I hope that you went ahead and marked as textual support. It does have elements of commentary in it, but what it's doing is mapping out the argument and it's providing the support for the assertion that's in yellow. So the yellow here, Ellison down to the word understanding, is the thesis statement here. And what I also did is highlight a couple other words that imply that there's some sort of analysis going on above it. And as we continue into the essay, one of the things that I really wanted to focus on are the blue parts. Look at the level of detail here. He has 1,369 light bulbs. Then you get the quote here. And if you notice after the quote, there's still a little yellow. Go ahead and interpreting it. It's saying he did this because he was mocking, accepting his position of absurdity. And then when you get down to the next part, there's still a little bit of blue. So we don't quite have the assertion support balance we need. But if you look at paragraph 3, this is a perfect example of having that assertion support commentary. You've got a beautiful topic sentence here in paragraph 3. then you've got all this really specific textual detail in blue. Okay, and then if you skip down to the bottom, sorry about that. If you skip down to the bottom, what you'll see is that in the yellow, there's really specific information here about. So when you get down to the paragraph here, you can see this yellow. It talks about the Sambo dolls, and then it goes directly into interpretation. They act as symbols of power, of stereotypes to control behavior. Sambo's the epitome of a stereotypical character. Just the level of analysis is beautiful. And then at the bottom it says, he is thus rendered incapable of making a social impact because the audience fails to see his message. And then if you go to paragraph 4, you'll see that he or she does what I specifically told you guys to do, which is pull out of the text, just focus on the commentary, and then go back and reassert the universal meaning of the work as a whole. Ellison implied that it makes an acceptance of one's invisibility to fulfilled in a world of oppression. Obviously, this essay is not perfect. You know, the kid only had 40 minutes and it's so long. But again, if you look at it, he or she did exactly what I said. Go use the advantage and then look at how it's a burden. So let the structure of the essay work for you. Let the structure of the prompt work for you. One of the other things you'll see is I sent you the scores here. And what I did is I highlighted the parts of the claims that are really important. The fact that it has strong defensible thesis. The fact that um, it has all this evidence, and the College Board readers showed you what evidence they thought was clear. And then in row C, it talks about how it got the sophistication point, not only because it had a universal meaning, but the universal meaning was very valid in terms of the context of the culture that it was describing, the African American struggle in the mid 20th century. Those are all points that made it really convincing. Now, if you juxtapose this one with the atonement essay that I also sent you, which hopefully we'll have a chance to look at in a second, you'll see here that it points out that there is a ton of textual support. Bryony's gift becomes a burden since McEwen punishes her with vascular dementia. But what we really want to focus here is on how this one's lacking commentary. And I think looking at the one that's lacking commentary will really help you understand what support is, that they gave her a 4 here, but a 1 here. And I think if you look at what this author does versus what you're doing, you'll see compared to the first one what the balance should be. What it says here is we need to realize, if you look at C down here, what it says is we need to realize that life is messy and it's impossible to truly mold life to perfection on our own terms. So what you would expect to see is these abstractions developed in the essay, that life is messy, and to show why it's impossible to mold life to perfection. But if you go look at the essays themselves, what you're going to see is they don't really do that. What I did here is highlight this one. So if you haven't read this one and highlighted it yet, please stop here and do that for me, and come back. And now that you've done that, what you'll see is most of this essay I've highlighted blue because the majority of it is just plot summary. This plot summary has to be here, but they also need to add more analysis, more commentary. Because if you scroll through what I've done, you'll just see that I only have a little bit of yellow. And particularly what I'd like to focus on is that concluding statement here. We cannot assert our control unnecessarily because the results might not be as we expect. That's what she was trying to prove right here. Both Robbie and Celia are due to the Second World War. That relates up here to why Bryony has a specific outcome plan for the play. Her cousins, more specifically Lola, thwarts Bryony's vision and she becomes petulant and immaturely takes out her anger on plants. In this unfortunate chain of event, Bryony asserts her power over Robbie when she accuses him of raping Lola. Okay, this doesn't make sense the way the kid did it. The pacing is just too fast. It's not quite set up correctly because what we needed to have told to us first is that Bryony has a crush on Robbie, that Robbie's a lower class boy, so it's inappropriate for her to have that crush. What's worse is that Cecilia, who is Robbie's crush, is actually Bryony's sister. So Bryony has an older sister named Cecilia who is in love with Robbie. Robbie's in love with Cecilia, and they have an inappropriate relationship. What happens is Bryony sees her sister and the guy she has a crush on having a sexual relationship, and to get back at him, she goes and accuses him of raping her cousin. Um, that's her attempt to assert control. So the way that the character described this to show that she did this to show she's more powerful over her cousin, it's not quite explained in a way that helps us understand what Robbie and Celia being dead due to the Second World War have to do with anything. Um, Bryony's trying to rewrite the story so that Robbie and Cecilia have a happily ever after ending, but you can see where this doesn't quite work because the example she gave didn't tie back to the claim. And when we look at the evidence, there's a ton of evidence there, but it just doesn't add up in a way that's logical and makes sense to us. So I hope this helped. I hope the act of trying to highlight and determine the difference between textual support helps. Again, I'm going to send you guys links to both As You Like It and Streetcar Named Desire. So if you have time, you can rewatch them before the exam. But April 3rd is the big day where they release what question we're having. But I think just looking through this would help you in any college English class, or actually in any English class or any class where you have to assert a meaning and support. So let me know if you have any questions. Just leave them in the comments. Thanks. Bye.